Welcome to Taking the High Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of the show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. Each week, I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehighroad.com. This week, I'm excited to have a wise beyond his years young leader who's all about building relationships and being a connector in this great industry, Ed Burns, CEO of Burns Logistics. Thank you so much for joining me, Ed.
Jeremy, thanks so much for having me. We've never had a bad conversation, so we're going to have fun today.
Yeah, never. You're right. I'd love to learn about your background, what got you into the trucking industry. I'll ask you to certainly share about Burns Logistics, the company you're now leading alongside your father. Perhaps we can get a little philosophical, as I believe you and I have so much in common with our approach to life and business and just prioritization, especially as a young family and especially through this challenging freight market. I also want to make sure we talk about edburns.org. I'm anxious to hear your plans to showcase your wisdom and personality. And lastly, we'll answer a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does that work for you?
It works great. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, as you probably know, I normally start with a book recommendation, and you and I are both avid readers and can probably do an entire show just on books. And maybe there's a special episode someday entirely focused on books. That'd be fun. But until then, can you share with the audience a particular book that's been impactful to you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's really hard to keep this to one, Jeremy, because
doesn't have to be one.
I'm a bibliophile, man. You know, I'm a voracious reader. I love books. I love words. Really enjoyed The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino, which is it's a lot about mindset and how to view people and how to view our role in the sales world. I think all of us do sales to some degree. We're all selling something. If we're answering the phone at our company, we're representing it. If we're whatever our job is, whatever our role is, there's an element of sales. And the book's really about getting our heads right around how we view ourselves and how we view other people. So one of the it's really a book of affirmations, right? So, and one of them that I love is, I will greet this day with love in my heart, right? So when we talk about a tough marketplace, challenges that come up, it's easy to get down. And in order to stay optimistic, one really nice way to battle those mental challenges, I think, is to say, I will greet this day with love in my heart. And to greet everyone we interact with, to just think quietly in the back of our mind, like, I love this person. When you first meet them, it sounds a little weird when you articulate it that way, but if you treat people with love and kindness, it really makes a big difference. Another book that has been very powerful in my journey entrepreneurially and in the business world is Traction, which is about the EOS model by Gino Wickman. And I think a great companion to that is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Oh, great suggestions. Only one of them I'm very familiar with, which is Traction. I agree with you. Excellent book on just, sort of how to just be organized and how to model your business. And so the optimism that you talk about, though, in The Greatest Salesman in the World, I think some people might see that book and be like, oh, that's a sales book. I'm not in sales. And I think
right.
To your point, we all are to some degree. And how important it is to be optimistic especially in an environment like this. But I don't think it's weird to think of people when you meet somebody and say, I love this person, because imagine if we all did that, what a much better world we'd live in.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So
you'll be a lot more caring, right? A lot more patient.
For sure. And I think we get, some of that experience being parents too. And again, I know that
Sure.
There's so much that you and I have in common. You started in business quite young, right? 20-ish years old. You're an entrepreneur. Can you share a little bit about your journey that led you to the trucking industry?
Yeah, well, pretty simply, I grew up in it, right? My dad was an old school freight LTL sales guy. He got a job working on a dock when he found out my mom was pregnant with me. So he started working nights, moving freight and reloading trailers. And he he moved into a sales role from there, and he's a natural sales guy. And he would bring us kids with him on sales calls. So we'd go to manufacturers, we'd go to lunches, we'd go to entertainments, and we got to know the people he was calling on, and he would become friends with these people, and we'd become friends with their kids, and really built relationships that way. He would make sure a truck came to school every year to talk about the no zone, and a driver would talk about the industry and what it was like to be a truck driver, and that was normal. I realize now that that's not happening in most schools across the country, but growing up for us, that was like, yeah, that's just how it is. Truck drivers come and talk at school. So was able to crawl around trucks as a kid and go to truck driving competitions, and really grew up around the industry. He started his business when I was about 15. Was really impressed by him doing that because it was a lot of work, and he got after it and just worked tirelessly for our family. And I really admired that. He had lost his job, and he said, I'm going to do this. It was around 2008. The economy was not good. Trucking was not good. So I respected him tremendously for his work there. My mom was involved in the business as well. And so then I went off to college and did my own thing and got into the marketing world. I figured marketing is going to be applicable to whatever industry I wind up in. But I started going to conferences with my dad, started calling on trucking companies. This was like, 10 years ago or so. And it was like, hey, how cool would it be, trucking company, if you had a website that showed up on a driver's phone so they could apply for a job? And I was like, nah, not interested, right? But was selling into the industry and to vendors in the industry, and just stay tied in to the industry, and always thought the people in trucking were tremendously hardworking and phenomenally good people. So when I sold my business, I called my dad and asked for an interview, and here we are.
Well, usually when I talk about a family business on this show, it's a multi-generational trucking company, right? In your case, obviously, you joined your father's business, Burns Logistics, and I know, and I think that's probably shortly after when you and I met, and you certainly embraced the industry wholeheartedly. Clearly, you had already been doing that. You've already been rooted in the industry well beyond those years that we met. But you took over the CEO role in 2023, so congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
I want to talk about Burns Logistics. I know you're not a freight broker. Something much more valuable than that, especially in this market. Can you share with the audience what Burns Logistics is all about?
Absolutely. So, Jeremy, we're professional connectors, right? Our business model is a little bit different. Some people do mistake us for a brokerage, but that's not the space we play in. We don't have our authority. We are outsourced sales representation for trucking companies. We work with asset fleets in the mid-size range, and we help get them into shipper accounts. We work in the contract space. We don't really play in the spot market world. And if you think about it, if somebody has 100 trucks, the owner's probably in charge of doing sales, which means that person is just putting out fires all day and not. The reality is that a lot of these small to mid-sized trucking companies do not work on their business as much as they should. They're working in their business, right? And so we help with that problem by taking care of the sales aspect and helping them to work with shippers. And shippers want to work with those small to mid-sized fleets a lot of times. They just don't necessarily know where to find them. So on that side, we're kind of an extension of the procurement team.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I would expect, especially in this climate, in this market, there's a lot of value that you're able to bring some of these carriers who are, in some cases, sadly, hanging by a thread.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Curious, what's it like working with your dad? You shared, how you, and I've met him. We had dinner together, and great human being. And I see where you get it. But what's that like?
Well, I'm very fortunate. I talk to a lot of other people in multi-generational businesses who have a different dynamic from the one that we have. My dad is a phenomenally humble and patient man. He's very, very kind and very caring, and very willing to listen and to defer to me on decisions. So it's pretty easy comparatively, we have a very good relationship. I think it's important that we continue to work on that relationship. It does get more contentious when we don't spend a lot of time together. If he's traveling one place and I'm going somewhere else, we're like two ships in the night. That you feel it after a couple months of that. And so just taking some time to be together in more of a social context and just catch up and take care of the father-son relationship and take care of the partners in the business side of the relationship and talk about this challenging market and work through things together. I learn a lot from him. He's been in the industry a very long time. He's a phenomenal relationship builder, an excellent salesperson. So I learn a ton from him, and his industry knowledge is, tremendous. So, we just try to spend intentional time together, at least once a week, get together, review our notes, and it's pretty good. Yeah, we're very fortunate.
Well, I can tell you when you first started out and you shared some of the qualities, the kindness and the patience and those sorts of things, like I can't help it. That's what I think any father would hope that their children would say about them, in, 10, 20 years from now. My kids are 10, 11, and 12 years old. It would be, I'd get all emotional, if that's, what is said. But it makes you, make sure that that is the way that you behave. And that's the model that you set for them so they can say those sorts of things when that question may be asked of them, tell me about your dad. So,
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that's hard stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we might have to sit down on a couch and talk through some of these things.
Okay.
You and I think we first met like in early 2021. I think it was on the other side of COVID, but just barely.
Yeah.
I remember we were at a large industry event. I don't remember if it was ATA or TCA, but you just walked up to me and introduced yourself. And from that moment on, we became fast friends and just have stayed in touch ever since.
Yeah.
And that is kind of to your point. You're a connector. What is it about the trucking industry and specifically your area of focus with Burns Logistics that fits so well into what Ed Burns is all about?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, I probably walked up to you because you were smiling. You're always smiling, and it's always so much easier to approach somebody with a smile, Yeah, I love connecting people. People solve problems, right? There's a lot of great technology out there, and we're talking about it a lot right now in the industry, but we have for a long time, right? I remember when the big buzzwords were big data and Internet of Things and stuff like that and blockchain, and these things are still relevant, but they've largely disappeared from the conversation. But what hasn't disappeared is the importance of relationships, right? At the end of the day, most of the time, it's a person who solves the problem. When we can connect other people, I think the problems get solved a lot quicker and a lot easier. And our industry does have a lot of opportunity for improvement right now. And it is a tough market, and people are going bankrupt. And some of the problems are avoidable. And the right connection can make those problems be avoided.
Agree. And, speaking of relationships, I've spent over 20 years in the industry. My favorite thing that I say all the time is just how amazing, the relationships that I've built over the years. And I don't know another industry that has that same level of deep, almost familial relationships.
Yes.
And I would expect, and you certainly see that, and you're a bit major part of that, but I would expect that, especially in this challenging freight environment, that these relationships, really come in handy.
Yes.
How have you adapted, to this market the past couple of years with your approach to those relationships and connecting people?
Yeah. Well, I think I've heard some people say that the industry's not that welcoming, and I think there's actually some truth to that. Because it is so tight knit, right? It's hard to break in, and especially if you come in, like I think if we look back 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of technologies came into the space, and when they came in, they came with these solutions that may or may not have been applicable, but a really smart person saw a problem and tried to solve it with technology. And then when they went to sell to the industry, they couldn't speak the industry language. They were seen as an outsider and they were not welcomed in. I don't know that that's bad. It just is. It's for us, it's good because we do have pretty strong relationships, and so we have just leaned into them, recognizing that we're not gonna. This is not the time for us to break into new shippers, right? Tried to call on some new shippers early on in this, wasn't too welcome. Not the warmest and fuzziest conversations. The industry is cyclical, and you just got to work with it. So we're building more relationships on the carrier side, more new relationships, and we're leaning into our older, established relationships on the shipper side, recognizing that the market's going to flip at some point, and when it does, that becomes the time to call on new shippers and establish new relationships when they're more open to it. I think a lot of people are, you can't fight this storm. You're really shoveling against the tide if all you're doing is trying to break into new accounts right now. It's not going to be very efficacious. Have you seen some of that too?
It's tough. Yeah, it's super tough. And you made a really good point about the industry. You're right. Like, it's not a bad thing. I don't think it is a bad thing that it's tight knit, and that's not what you're saying. But it's that it's tight knit, and as a result, it might seem impenetrable. But that is often the case with an outsider in any tight knit group. I think that's human nature. And there's plenty of, and my background has been, I've been an employer of CDL drivers for a long time, 15 plus years in the industry, and then I built a software company as an insider, and I think that was a much better path, to gaining, to building. Well, I already had so many relationships built, but to find some success. Whereas had I been a, Silicon Valley, entrepreneur who saw this problem, and there's plenty of opportunities in trucking to solve with technology, but it would have a really hard time penetrating. To your point, you don't know the language, you don't know the people. And I'll also say, and I know that, you touched on this a little bit earlier, technology is a great thing for so many of us, but it's not replacing humans. The relationships, if anything, it should enhance the relationships that you have, whether that's through better communication tools or whatever it is. But the point of technology is never, and certainly in my case with DriverReach, was never to replace the functionality or the importance of a recruiter/driver, relationship. It's just to make it better. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah. If you're solving a problem, what you're doing is you're making someone better at their job.
Right.
And more effective.
Now, I do want to switch gears and dive a little deeper into the mind of Ed Burns.
It's a scary place.
But it's not dark. I know that.
No, it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Oh, I love that. You've got an interesting hobby as a builder. Can you share what it is that you build and why that became something that's therapeutic for you?
Absolutely, Jeremy. I believe that sandcastles are an analogy for life and for business, because when and I love to build them, not just figuratively, literally. Build sandcastles, because sandcastles, like a business, you start building this thing and it's not going to last forever, right? You got kids who are going to want to kick it down, and dogs that are going to want to take a dump on it, and seagulls who are going to land on it, and all kinds of stuff like that. But constantly the tide's coming in and going out, and with it come the waves, and the waves are looking to knock you out, right? And if you pick the wrong place to build your sandcastle or the wrong time, it's going to get wiped out right away. And it's like that with our businesses too. You could have, a great idea for a coffee shop, but if you open it up in the wrong location, it's not going to do well. You could have a brilliant idea to start a trucking company, and you hit the marketplace at the wrong time, and you're going to get wiped out. I mean, we're seeing some of that. So that's we build anyway. We build knowing it's not going to last forever, right? Even Amazon's probably not going to be around in 1,000 years. Walmart probably won't be around in 1,000 years. There are so many great, wonderful companies that were around 50, 60 years ago that are no longer here. But we build anyway because I think we have an inherent desire to create and to build and to share with others. And I think the other piece about the sandcastle is the legacy piece. When you start building a sandcastle, at first everybody's like, why is this grown man building a sandcastle? What is wrong with him? Should we put him on a watch list? And then by the end of the day, you start building something and people start looking and they start thinking, oh, you start getting a couple compliments. And if it lasts a couple days and you can really build it out, then people start saying, you really start getting compliments, and then people start taking pictures with it. But the most beautiful thing that can happen when you build a sandcastle is the next day when you come out and you see other people down the beach building their sandcastles. And I think in life and in business, if we can build something or act in a way that encourages other people to emulate the act of building, right? They don't have to make the same thing you make. They don't have to do it the same way. But if they come away inspired by what you've done to then go build something on their own, then that's a successful life, right? That's what a legacy is to act in a way that inspires other people to do something good and creative.
It's contagious, right?
It is contagious.
It can be in a good way, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
We can still say that. We can say that again. We for a while there during COVID, you're like, dude, that's not a word to say. But I think it's okay, and I think it's healthy.
Yeah.
And I know aside from that hobby, you've also got your own website, edburns.org. I want to talk about that. What prompted you to create that and share it with the world?
Well, Jeremy, I love to write, and LinkedIn has been an outlet for writing. I don't always get it right. I use it as a place to engage with other people and share ideas and get feedback, and I'm very open to being wrong. But it's fun to write. And I've been working on some longer form writing. I'm working on a book talking about how sandcastles are like life and business. And I would like to make that into a book one day and get it out there. And then just practically from a marketing branding perspective, I put my content out on LinkedIn, but the reality is with any social media, it could go away. If the servers they're on go down, or an EMP goes off in the wrong place, or their algorithm changes, it can go away. And doing marketing, I learned this. We had people we did work with who were very reliant on Facebook, for example, for their businesses, and they would sell through Facebook. And when Facebook started to change their algorithm, they suffered tremendously because all they had was Facebook. And so I think you have to have multiple platforms and at least some that you own, right? And so that would be an email list and a website. So I bought edburns.org, and then I invested in edburns.com. I have a fairly common name, and there are famous people with it. So, to show up on Google is somewhat challenging. And so it's like a sandcastle, Jeremy. I don't really have the plan. Sometimes when you're building a sandcastle, somebody comes up and they say, well, what are you building? And you say, I don't know. I'm just building. I don't know. We'll see what it turns into. I think that's kind of what this is. It's I don't know quite what it is yet. I think just another forum to share some ideas, maybe create some longer form content and share it with the world, and maybe put a book or two on there in the years to come. I love helping people and sharing what I've learned on my entrepreneurial journey so far. I think I have a long, long way to go. But in 20 years, maybe I'll have more to share on that topic, and hopefully can put it out there.
Well, for the record, I'm a subscriber, so I'm anxious to see some of the content. I should love to write, because I feel like I have a lot to share as well. And writing is a task. It's a chore that I always feel great after I've done it.
Yes.
But it's the perfectionist in me that it's easier just to never start it, which is a horrible, way to think. So you're inspiring me just in your talk about, loving to write and that sort of thing, because that's something that I need to do more of myself.
Well, Jeremy, you're an idea guy. You have ideas. You have thoughts. Ever since I met you, you shared ideas, and you're tremendously well read. So I think consider it. Maybe it could go from labor to labor of love.
Yes, I need to. It just takes doing.
I'm going to hold you accountable on that.
Thank you. That's
okay.
Seriously, please.
I will.
So, for those in the audience who don't yet know you, I highly encourage you to connect with Ed. You mentioned LinkedIn, so you connect with him on LinkedIn, certainly. And I would encourage you also go to edburns.org and subscribe. That'll put some pressure on him to start, doing some stuff there. But and hopefully there's some business opportunities that come from those connections as well. But before we go, I want to transition to the deeper dive segment where we answer a question submitted by a listener. Let's see here. Today's deeper dive question is brought to you by Career Now Brands. Question is, do you have any idea when this freight market will improve? Ed, you're in the thick of it. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Well, I really wish I knew, because I put some money in Vegas down on this one. I think there are a lot of variables, and there's a lot going on in the world that has impacted this. In full candor, I thought it would have flipped by now. Carriers cannot keep running at a loss. It's just not. How long can you do that for? Not very long. It's a very low margin industry to begin with for the carriers, right? If they're making 5% for most fleets, that's a really good year. To be upside down 2 or 3% is really painful. How many years in a row can you do that? Well, we're going on 2. So I think we're going to have more exits. I think there's a reality that there are probably some players in the industry, some small fleets that don't know that they're running at a loss necessarily, so they keep going. I think banks are a little bit nervous to recall loans, right? Like they don't want to have a bunch of equipment. So I think that's impacting things a little bit.
Stretching it out, probably making it last longer than it otherwise might, even though you hate to encourage that, but at the same time, it's been 2 years.
Well, I've heard several fleet owners say more people have to go out of business for this to change, right? And I think that's just the stark reality of where we are. More people, we're going to have to lose some capacity in the marketplace in whatever form that comes in. If that means that some of the big fleets park their trucks, or if that means that some people go out of business, or if there's an influx of freight some way, somehow, then, that would tighten up capacity as well. But I'm hoping early new year that things are looking better.
Yeah, I agree with the answer to that question. I think everybody is just, again, you got to be optimistic, but we also have to be realistic. And
certainly,
every economist that we hear or talk to it's always 6 months out.
Yes.
That's the comfortable and easy thing to say. We think in maybe 6 months we'll start to see things improve, but we've been saying that for over a year.
Yep.
So,
yes.
But if I was to prognosticate here on the show, I would say about 6 months out.
Yeah, it's a safe bet. It's a safe bet. Well, I really don't think I don't think that the fleets can last much longer than into the early new year. If it gets to that point, then there will be a mass exodus, and it's going to be really ugly.
Yeah. Well, Ed, thank you. On that note,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
You can fight a monster and still be happy about it.
That's right.
I mean? Yeah,
that's right.
So,
I love that monster.
Yeah,
right. You got to love that monster.
Love the monster. Love the monster.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the work that you're doing for the industry, and I look forward to seeing you at some upcoming industry events.
I can hardly wait.
Thank you for taking the higher road with me. And once again, special thanks to the sponsors of this show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.